Scott just made the great point that in this world, it is guilty until proven innocent. We see it all the time in requests for evidence, whether it's changing to the H-1B, OPT, green card, whatever it is. Prove to us that you maintain status. They're saying you need to prove to us that this entire time you're here, you maintain status.
For any student or parent of a student studying in the U.S. on an F1 visa, a student visa, this is a must-view show, a must-listen-to show. Dr. Josh gives us really helpful information that will make a huge difference. Now, onto the show. Hello and welcome to the show. This is Global Student Voices, and today I'm sitting down with Josh Schoonover, probably known by Josh to those who've come to find him in their hour of need. He's the founder of Ask A DSO and a compliance resource and advisory platform sitting at the intersection between international students and the institutions that serve them. Josh, welcome to Global Student Voices.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Before we get too far into the details, I want to hear a little bit about how you got here. What's the story behind Ask A DSO, and maybe what was the gap that made you feel like, hey, somebody needs to build something here?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So I've been working with international students for about a decade now, and there's really about 3 years ago where I'm very aware to be privileged to work at an institution that was created with international students in mind. So lots of the framework is built around international student support. We get great collaboration from other departments within the institution. And yet, even within our school, there's still so many more needs that international students had that were beyond our bandwidth, our ability to provide. And one day I was just kind of sitting there and reflecting on it. And I just had this thought of like, if this is happening here, where we literally wove international student support into our DNA, how much more do international students need support at these other institutions where the school was started, and then at some point they said, oh, by the way, we should host international students too. And that was really the genesis of Ask A DSO.
Yeah, that's great. And my experience as a DSO at a school, it was definitely added later. And I took it really seriously because of my background, but I certainly found myself talking to colleagues and getting calls from colleagues at other institutions where, they were like a professor of economics, and the DSO was added to their job because they didn't have a full load or something. And there's definitely a gap. So I'm delighted to see filling in that gap. It's definitely a high need. There certainly will be listeners that are still in high school, students and their parents and high school leadership. For that audience, can you tell us a little bit, just what is a DSO? What are we talking about here?
Yeah. Always good to start at the beginning. So DSO stands for Designated School Official. They're the people at institutions, high school, colleges, that are able to create and manage international student records. So the branch of the government, I'm going to do this super high level. I promise I won't go too deep into the weeds. The branch of the government that allows foreign nationals to study in the U.S. is SEVP, the Student and Exchange Visitor Program. They have an online database, the Student Exchange Visitor Information System, we call it SEVIS, where all of these records are created and maintained. And the DSO is the person at the school who's able to access that online database, create a record for a foreign national that wants to come into the U.S. and study, and then make various updates along the way. That's the nuts and bolts of it. But then the kind of, as you pan out, these are really the resources for international students at the institution. They're the ones who know the regulations, know what's permissible and impermissible for international students, can guide you strategically based on what your plans are. Is your plan to be in the U.S. for 1 year and then go back home? Is it to graduate and then transfer for a bachelor's degree, a master's degree? Like whatever it is, that's the person for you to sit down with and map out what your long-term plan is, instead of trying to, bring in all these different patchwork guidances from all these different branches of the government and apply it to your own unique situation.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And I would imagine that some of the reason that students reach out to you is that they're at a school where the DSO maybe doesn't have the breadth of experience. And so they want to do something that isn't the quote unquote normal thing that students do at their school. Is that something that you do hear about fairly often? It certainly seems like a need like that would be a hot spot for students.
Absolutely. It's whenever you get off of the FAQ, like how do I get a travel endorsement? How do I take an annual vacation? These are the things that are on the frequently asked question list. But when you get into, I'm thinking about adding a second concentration, and I don't know if I'm going to do STEM OPT or if it's worth it to, transfer to a different institution based on this timeline or this regulation that's coming down the pipe. And as we record this on April 20th, there's a pending duration of status rule change that's looming over everybody's head, but it hasn't gone into effect yet. But that doesn't mean that people haven't started planning for it yet. And
Right.
to your point, Scott, sometimes DSOs, most of the time, in my experience, almost all of the time, DSOs are well meaning people who genuinely want to help. Sometimes they don't have the breadth of experience, like you said. Sometimes they're overloaded. They don't have the bandwidth to dive deep into these things. Sometimes it is somebody who is brought over from another department because it was the best fit at the time. There's all these different reasons why a very well meaning person at an institution can't give you the kind of individualized long term support that you're looking for. And I'm fortunate to be able to do that with my work at Ask A DSO.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think that's fantastic. You mentioned in that some changes coming up. Let us know a little bit just
Mm-hmm.
about what changes have already happened. I know there's fear and anxiety, which existed.
Mm-hmm.
It's always existed in immigration. Like nobody wants to make a mistake that's going to get them deported, right? But it seems that current climate has created additional anxiety. So what are some of the changes?
Yeah.
Like, is there some peace for some students who maybe are super anxious right now? And what do you see happening in the next eminently, but also in the next maybe 12 months?
Yeah, let me dive into my crystal ball on that. But first, some of the stuff that's already happened is we laugh because that's what our business is like. What is coming down the pipe? How is it going to impact international students? How can we prepare for that ahead of time? There's been some things obviously that we've already seen. We've seen the revised travel ban that, unlike Trump's first term, this one has withheld judicial scrutiny, and it's been in place for several months now. And there's no indication that that's going to change, and that bans travel from students from 20 countries and severely restricts travel from students from 20 other countries. They now those students who are from those countries and are already in the U.S., they're allowed to remain in the U.S. Their visas aren't revoked. The travel's restricted. But another thing that we're seeing in practice, and this is all anecdotal right now because there's obviously no official reports about this, but many students from these impacted countries, their applications for future visas, future benefits, OPT, H-1Bs, things of that nature, they're not getting processed. And it's not that
Yeah,
they're not getting denied, they're just not getting approved. And so then you have like OPT, I'm seeing that with students from certain countries, you can probably guess which ones they are. you know, there's the 90-day standard processing time, and then it goes 90 days to 120 days, and now you're getting past 120 days. And I'm even starting to see some students on who've applied for the STEM OPT extension. STEM OPT extension, you automatically get 6 months of work renewal because the idea was you will have a decision within those 6 months. Well, now we're seeing some students in STEM OPT, it's extending beyond that. And what appears to be happening is just a sick and twisted form of the waiting game where they're like, well, we don't have to give you an answer. So we're just going to see how long you can stay in the US and deal with this uncertainty. And, in these situations, you're waiting for OPT approval, you're waiting for STEM OPT approval without working. So it's
yeah,
become really unfortunate. And that's already happening. And then what we're looking at forward at is potential for no second master's degrees, for having to go ascending in program level, bachelor's, master's, doctorate, not being able to transfer out at the graduate level, and potentially even a reduction of the big one is a fixed term for how long people are able to stay in the U.S. Right now, it's duration of status. They can stay as long as they're enrolled in the program of study, but this rule would make it so they'd have to apply at the end of every program to extend their status.
I have lots of commentary. I will hold my tongue so I can stay on the air. In this phase, and you mentioned it a little bit, but they're stuck in the waiting game. Are there other cracks that you're seeing students fall through, and then maybe compliance mistakes
Mm-hmm.
that are often made that seem minor that are affecting students
Yeah,
severely?
I appreciate you asking the question. I talked about OPT a little bit already, and I'll use it again just because it's such a good example of how punitive things can be for international students. This last week, I had a student who submitted their OPT application, um, forgot to get a DSO endorsement on the I-20, so submitted it with the same DSO that they've been using for the last 4 years. They saw you need a copy of your I-20 on the I-765. They're like, okay, well, here's my I-20. I've been using it for 4 years at the DMV, at the bank, for everything. So here you go. Here's
Right.
my I-20. And because he didn't get the OPT recommendation, his CVIS record or his OPT application was denied. And unfortunately, the processing time was taking so long that it went beyond his grace period, and now his record completed and he's out of status. And so, one minor mistake, one minor oversight, now not only does he not get to stay in the US and work for a year like he'd been planning for and working for this entire time, but now he's just got to go through the battle of getting back in status. And that's what it's like for international students. Like just the amount of things to be aware of and dotting your T's and crossing your I's and making sure that every little piece is in place, not just at the OPT juncture, but throughout your program of study, entering, obviously, all of these things are where it's helpful to have an expert in your corner, whether it be the DSO at your university or gain third party assistance from someone who's been through it 1,000 times.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's now more than ever. Pardon the interruption. Thanks for listening to this episode of Global Student Voices. We're glad you're here. We try really hard to provide good content for international school leaders, parents, and students. But to know what you want to hear, we need to hear from you. So please reach out and let us know what you'd like to hear next. Now, back to the show. Make sure that you're checking everything with your
Mm-hmm.
DSO, and having access to a third party, particularly if you know your DSO is a bit overwhelmed. There were times, even when I was DSO for 10 years, and there were times even after I'd been doing it 8 years that I would hesitate and be like, actually, that's a great question, and then go into my let me do some more research and let me reach out to colleagues and all that. But for students, if you're getting that from your DSO and they're giving you some long pause, that's a great time to reach out to Josh or to find another resource that you can supplement it with, because it obviously this is, we
Mm-hmm.
say this true for always for international students. It's guilty until proven innocent kind of experience. You have to prove that you're in compliance all the time. You always have to take the lead. You're responsible. There's no well, I didn't know excuse for international students, and it's unfortunate. And it's terribly inhospitable for those of us who are hosting students. It's kind of the reality. Is there, in the area of compliance, beyond the DSO example or beyond the OPT example, are there other compliance things that you just like? Here's a free one. Everybody just needs to know.
It sounds rudimentary, but it's what I tell students all the time, especially in uncertain times like this. Start with the basics. Like, people want to think about regulations changing and how it impacts this plan, that plan, whatever. If you're not enrolled in a full course, none of it matters. If you don't attend class, none of it matters. If you're not updating your DSO, if you move, if you're not keeping records of your class syllabi and your attendance records, Scott just made the great point that in this world, it is guilty until proven innocent. We see it all the time in requests for evidence or RFEs that come in for different, whether it's changing to the H-1B, OPT, green card, whatever it is. Prove to us that you maintain status. And they're not coming from a point of, well, we have this evidence that you violated status. No, they're saying you need to prove to us that this entire time you're here, you maintain status. And so you're going to need to provide academic records, syllabi for your courses, travel records, parking passes for, like if you drove to school, if not bus passes, just anything that you can stack up along the way to show I'm here, I'm actively studying, I'm doing my work, I'm going to school physically, I'm physically attending classes in a classroom, I'm not zooming in all the time. You're going to be super grateful 2, 3, 4 years down the road that you are maintaining those records the entire time instead of scrambling to do it afterwards when you get an RFE and you get 45 to 60 days to respond.
Yeah, that's just crazy. So it's basically the same, kind of goes back to the same thing I tell students who are applying to college. You should be keeping track of any of your volunteerism, the classes you've taken, the big learning moments, make sure you're keeping a record. That just continues now on the immigration side, and make sure that you're keeping records. That idea that you can be picked up and say, prove to me that you're a student beyond a student ID is crazy
Mm-hmm.
to me, but I've heard several stories. How do you prove you're a student? How do you prove that you're going to class? And your examples, I think, were really, really helpful there. Um, yeah, it's just
Yeah,
it's
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 tough. I
insane.
mean, yeah, prove to me that the last 4 years you're going to school. It's like you would think an official transcript would be enough.
Sure.
Sadly, you would be mistaken. They require a lot more than that.
Yeah, as an American thinking about that, my son just graduated not that long ago. Thankfully, he's never been asked that question. But how would he possibly, like? How would you, like? It's just crazy, like to think about your examples of parking passes and bus passes and all that just seems syllabi. Just seems,
Well, and the
yeah,
thing too is like my wife loves Marie Kondo. She's all about, decluttering and tidying and all of that stuff. And this violates every principle of keeping a tidy house. Like
right.
keep a parking pass that you don't need. Keep a syllabus for a class that ended a year ago. Like we don't intuitively do these things to keep a clean living space. But for international students, investing in just like a little bucket, a little file cabinet, and every single thing just filing it away, you never know how much it could save you down the road. And some schools will be great and they will retroactively go back and find that syllabus for that Bio 101 class that you took 2 years ago. Not every school has the bandwidth to do that. Some schools don't
Yeah,
keep records like that for the same reason I just mentioned. So, we want, as much as we want to say, you can depend on your university, you can depend on the DSO, you can depend on us to bring you up all of those things. At the end of the day, anybody who's listening, I want you to take care of yourself first and foremost. You're always going to put more care into taking care of yourself than anyone else can. Trying to go backwards.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say a student is currently enrolled, they're on an F1 visa, and they recognize a need for an outside opinion, some additional help. Tell me a little bit about what you've set up for students and how it works.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I have a community for international students. It's hosted on school.com. It's Ask A DSO. It's free to join. You can come in. There's message boards. I do a free monthly webinar where I take questions and answers for students who want more individualized support. There's ways to upgrade and get more one-on-one contact, strategic planning, development for graduation, beyond graduation, into your career. If you want to learn more about it, school.com. Search for Ask a DSO or just visit my website, askadso.com. And for those of you that are on LinkedIn, I'm very active on LinkedIn. It's just Josh Schoonover. I know it's a difficult name to spell, but the spelling will be in the description.
That's right. We'll put all those links in the description. So if you're wherever you're listening to this or watching it, there'll be links to Ask a DSO. Definitely want to encourage folks to reach out. And do you also work like you said, that the schools? I've never met a school that wasn't trying to do a great job. They weren't always meeting their desire, but they certainly wanted to. And there certainly is a fair bit of turnover in the DSO ranks. Do you work with schools as well?
I do work with schools for exactly those reasons. A lot of people want to do a good job. They want to remain compliant. They want to be following the regulations. And it's so easy, especially in this world, there's so many gray areas. You start getting into the gray, and at a certain point, you lose track of like how far into the gray are we? And just a little bit of orientation goes a long way. So some of the things I do with schools is I do an audit of the F1 handbook, the catalog, make sure that those things are aligned, that they're aligned with the regulations as they're currently written, because obviously those things we've seen change quite a bit. CPT policies, we didn't talk about CPT a lot during this, but I've done a lot of work with curricular practical training and managing a program that allows international students to work while maintaining a compliance oriented culture. And it's withstood several SCVP field rep visits and recertifications and I-17 updates and all that stuff. So anybody looking to add or enhance or just pressure check your CPT program. And then, I've even launched a couple J1 designations as well. So anything like that, it's askadso.com/schools. I have a page set up directly for institutional leaders if they want to learn more. And you can always contact me too at josh@askadso.com. That one I made easy.
Thank you. I think those are the two areas. The students, if you need the support, reach out, get it. And schools, absolutely, unless you have an abundance of confidence. If I were at a school, I would reach out to Josh and just double check and make sure that we were doing things that we needed to be doing. It's almost impossible, particularly these days, to keep up with all of the changes that are happening, can be happening, might happen. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this with our audience. And I hope that folks reach out and get the help you need. We certainly wish you the best during this phase. And I hope it's a short phase and we can get back to some normalcy for you. But the 10 years I was there, several different presidential administrations, and there were changes every time. And so very, very familiar with that. As I was mentioned before, I was in my seat during right after 9/11, and it was a tumultuous time, and it's no less now.
And these tumultuous times have a way of sneaking up on us. They do.
Yeah, don't they? So thank you so much, Josh. I really appreciate you being on the show. Folks, thanks for listening, and reach out to Josh for your CPT, OPT, general immigration, F1, J1, all those letters and numbers. Josh is the guy, and we really appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Scott. Thanks for having me.
I'm so grateful you stayed till the end. This was a great episode, and I hope it was really helpful to you. Again, we'd love to hear your feedback, but we also wanted to make you aware of some of the other ways that you can connect with Global Student Solutions. Global Student Voices is a service of Global Student Solutions. We also provide books and resources like you see behind me, as well as a variety of other services, educational content, and consulting. So we would love to connect with you. And at the very least, if you can follow us and subscribe on our YouTube channel. We also have a membership program coming up, and we'd like you to be the first member. So let us know, get your name on the list, and we'll make sure that you're the first to join the membership community. Thank you, and have a great day.